Good evening, everybody. If you'd like, you can open your Bibles up to Exodus chapter 35. We've got a little bit more to cover in Exodus 35, and then we'll move into chapter 36. The children of Israel have come out of Egypt, and God has led them down to across the Red Sea down to Mount Sinai. They're going to be at Mount Sinai for about a year. There's a lot taking place here. What's already taken place at Mount Sinai by this point?
They broke the law.
Yeah, okay, a covenant was offered. They accepted the covenant was made, and then they broke it. What else?
Head jumped out far.
Yeah, that's right. That was Aaron's take on it.
They renewed the covenant.
They renewed the covenant. All right, so now, once again, they have a covenant relationship. Who was instrumental in that happening? Moses was instrumental in that happening. And he's pleaded for the people. So now the covenant is renewed. Now, do you remember what took place from the time that they first made the covenant was ratified, and then them breaking the covenant and Moses coming down and breaking the Ten Commandments? Do you remember what took place in between that time, besides the making of the golden calf? What was happening meanwhile elsewhere, while the children of Israel were plotting how to break God's law? What's Moses doing?
Listening to God, getting actually the commandments.
All right, he got the commandments. What else did he get besides the Ten Commandments? Instructions for the tabernacle. And so earlier, we saw all of this detail that God was given. Now what we're going to do, we skip that, though, for the purpose of this class. And we're going to come back now, and we're going to talk about that instruction. So when they made the covenant, what God did is he began to talk to them about how he was going to dwell among them, and this place that he was going to dwell among them, this special tent that he was going to dwell among them in. And then that all got put on hold because he can't dwell among them if they've broken the covenant. So we had to stop. We had to sort through all of that. The covenant had to be renewed. Now they can get back to work on that. All right, so here's what we think Mount Sinai looks like, and they come down. Now, when Moses gets back, he tells, after the covenant has been renewed, he tells them to take up an offering. What is the people's mentality about this offering?
Well, I gave free.
Yeah, it wasn't, oh, great. Ask, ask, ask. That's all you ever do is just ask. No, they were willing to do this, and I think someone may have mentioned the fact that, how did they feel when they realized that God wasn't going to be with them? They were sad. Now that they have an opportunity to build a place where God can dwell with them, there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm for that. And so they give, and that brings us to verse 30. Anybody, you have anything you want to say in the way of summary?
No, seem like they're in good spirits about this big project they have ahead of them.
So in verse 30, Moses said to the children of Israel, "See, the Lord has called by name Bezaleel." So that's one individual. In verse 31, he has filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and knowledge of all manner of workmanship, to design artistic work, to work in gold and silver and bronze, and cutting jewels for setting, and carving wood, and to work in all manner of artistic workmanship. And so he has put in his heart the ability to teach in him. And Aholiab, another individual here of the tribe of Dan, he has filled him with the skill to do all manner of work for the engraver and for the designer of tapestry making in blue and purple and scarlet, fine linen, and of a weaver, those who do every work, and those who design artistic works. So here's two individuals, Bezaleel and also Aholiab. And what are they going to be, essentially?
They're actually going to be the master teachers of the different things that's required for the...
That's right. And God has given them special wisdom and ability not only to do these things and know how they're to be done, but also to be able to instruct these other craftsmen in doing this. So we got several good things going here. And this is interesting to me because here's a project, and I like to think about, well, how does God do his work through us? And you see this joint participation that's taking place here. You have God, and God is asking for the people to contribute what they can contribute, and then God is providing what's needed for this to take place. And there are leaders that can instruct in this, and you see how the children of Israel and God are kind of participating together, joining together in this taking place. And I love that picture because I want to be useful in God's work, and I want Him to provide what I can't do, but I want to contribute what I can contribute. And so I think that this is just one of those places where we see that joint participation take place. You got anything you want to say for verse 35?
No, I don't believe so.
There's a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of things to take place here. Let's say I didn't cover verse 1, which really kind of goes along with that, but it's really the same idea there. So that they could do all that the Lord had commanded them to do. Anybody else have anything else before we move into this next section?
So he's going to give these people a skill set, but these two are going to guide them in that skill set, exactly how every little detail, what it's supposed to look like.
That's my understanding. Yeah, that's my understanding. That they have special skill in the craft itself, but then also the ability to teach that and to guide people in that, which I assume, it mentions several times that he put it in their heart, or he gave them understanding, gave them ability. So it doesn't just seem to be like these are well-studied people in these crafts. It seems like that God is inspiring them with this ability to do this. And so, some of these details that we wonder, well, I don't know exactly, it doesn't seem to be enough instruction there to be exactly clear how these corners are supposed to come together. I assume that these people understood that God had given them that knowledge to maybe fill in some of those details that we don't have recorded for us.
Well, in there in verse 1, it actually said the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how all manners of work for the service.
Yep.
So it's just like, when it tells later on about Solomon that he was the wisest man that ever was, and people would go to him, God actually put the wisdom and knowledge and understanding to these men to actually train the other members, because, it would be useless for God to command to build a tabernacle with all his special epods and gold and cherubims and Ark of the Covenant and all that if you didn't know actually how. Who has actually seen a cherubim could actually build one on the Ark of the Covenant? Only God would know how to tell somebody to do that.
That's right. You want to take that next section?
Yeah. So we'll begin in verse 2 and go down through 7. It says, Moses called Bezalel and Aholiab, and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord was put wisdom, everyone whose heart was stirred to come and do the work. And they received from Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of making the sanctuary. So they continued bringing to him freewill offerings every morning. Then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work he was doing, and they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord commanded us to do. So Moses gave a commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman do any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. And the people were restrained from bringing, for the material they had was sufficient for all the work to be done, indeed too much. So it's a little bit of, we had already mentioned their willingness to be a part of this, but this was a very big project, and I don't know how they had it organized or divided up or who was doing what where, but they're delivering supplies, or they get another every single morning. It seems like there's people there, and take that over to the so-and-so section over there, take that to them, and it doesn't take long till each man or each group who was in charge of doing different things and had their their specs here for what we're going to be doing starts looking at it, and they look, we have enough. We have all that we need. We don't need any more. Put it somewhere else. And eventually, everybody's got more than they need, and they have to make a proclamation that, all right, well, the supply need has been met, and don't bring any more. We have more than we need. You can keep what you have left. So it's a good little few verses there. The willingness to be a part of it, and the generosity towards this building that they're fixing to start.
You think about, Austin, I think, mentioned this morning during our collection, this attitude that they have, and the Lord loves those who give with cheerfulness. And can you imagine the elder standing up to the congregation and saying, "Now look, y'all are giving too much. We've got to stop this. All right, don't contribute so much every week. We've got the parking lot paid for. We don't have any more men that we know of that are needing support. There's just more than enough. Y'all stop it." It's a problem on Lucas. Lucas is having a problem having to cash all of these checks or whatever. So, I mean, it's difficult for us to imagine that. And I think one of the difficulties in that is because we're always looking for additional work. We're always looking for more work to do. And so there'll probably never be a time where the elders stand up and make that type of proclamation. But having that spirit that they had, like Lucas was saying, every morning they seem to be doing this. How does that work? It's like they come home and they say, "You know what? We still have those earrings. I would love to be able to donate those earrings." Well, do it. And so off she goes in the morning to get the gold earrings that they got. I don't know, but that spirit of willingness that finally they realize there's enough. It's like, okay, we've got a sufficient amount here, and it's a lot. We'll talk about some of the measurements of the precious metals as we get further in here, but it was a lot. It was a lot. Any thoughts, comments? Yeah. Yes, that's right. They plundered them, and Egypt was really, really wealthy.
Is there another time in Israel's history where you think they have this kind of wholehearted attitude on this?
Yes, there is. Somebody help me out. There's another time. Yeah, when they were building the wall, that's a very good, during Nehemiah's day, that's a great. It seems like there's another time where they're contributing, and my mind is just blank on it right now. It seems like there's two times where we see this willingness to offer. That's what I was trying to think of, but I can't.
But wouldn't it
I feel like
actually,
he said it.
Yeah.
wouldn't it actually started with David? Because David actually
Yeah, David had that heart for sure.
had them to start bringing stuff
Right.
in, and God told him, said, you can keep bringing it in, but you're not building.
Yeah. It seems like there was some. Anyway, I'll think of it. I'll send y'all out a message at 2 a.m. when I think of it.
So let's say it's 2 more times.
What's that?
So let's say it's 2 more times.
Yeah.
This is definitely for the Israelites probably one of their highlights where
Yeah.
they are really they're really in this and they're giving more than they need to.
Yeah.
And we won't always see that attitude. So this is one of the really good moments for them.
Yes, it is. One of the things. So, what do you think their demeanor was? Their attitude was. I'm using the word attitude too much. Their disposition. You meet one of them and they're on their way in the morning to give this. What kind of disposition would you expect them to have? Joyful. How do you want to live your life? Joyful. It's interesting to me that when we see people most joyful, they are living for something, a cause that's greater than themselves. And usually they're in the state of giving or contributing. People who are takers typically are not the joyful ones. And so that's interesting. You was talking about it being a highlight for them. I would say it was a highlight for them, not just in the way that God views them and God being pleased with their attitude. I would say it was a highlight for them in their existence on earth. As far as I think they probably enjoy existing on earth more right now than they will at other times. All right, well, let's get into the details of the tabernacle. Now, this gets tedious for a lot of people. And there are several sections in the Bible where we have these type of details, and I understand why it gets tedious. I do want us to try to get a good, clear picture of this. This has significance. We're not just describing some architectural We're not just describing a building. We're describing really a building where God dwells that has significance. One of the things that's taking place here is a pattern is being left. A pattern that later spiritual principles will be taught off of. And so the details do matter here. They are important. And so we'll learn those. We'll try to get those in our mind. And then later we'll see, when we get to the New Testament, we'll see how the Hebrew writer and others makes points from this that teaches us spiritual principles. So, starting in verse 8, then all the gifted artisans among them who worked on the tabernacle made 10 curtains of woven fine linen. First thing we're going to look at is the coverings of this structure. Now, tabernacle, what does it mean? It means tent. Literally, it means curtain, which is what a tent was made out of. And so, not surprisingly, we're going to talk about these different curtains or coverings for the tabernacle at first. And it wasn't just one, it was several. And some of them are pretty elaborate. Others seem to be more utilitarian in nature. But the first one that is described is 10 curtains of woven fine linen. Woven fine linen was, this was the premier fabric of the day. This was made out of plant fiber rather than animal fiber. And it took a long time to weave this, and it was comfortable, and it was expensive. And this is made out of fine linen and then embroidered as well. And so you see that it was made out of linen thread and blue and purple and scarlet yarn. What do you know about blue, purple, and scarlet?
It's royalty.
It's royalty.
Dyes were hard to get.
That's right. That's the reason why royalty liked it, because it was very hard to make. What happens when something's hard to make?
Price goes up.
It gets expensive. So only royalty could afford it. So here's the very best for the Lord. So this is going to be the innermost covering. I don't know, because this is embroidered with designs of cherubim, I would assume that it would be visible at some point, but maybe not. I'm not sure if it was on the inside of the planks or the boards, or if it was on the outside where it would be covered by other things. I'm not exactly sure how that was, but it was elaborate and expensive, no doubt. And you've got 10 of these curtains. And each of these 10 curtains are about 42 foot long and about 6 foot wide. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 of those curtains and we're going to join them together to make 2 big curtains. So you got 5 making one section, 5 making the other section. So now you have 2 sections, each being 42 foot by 30 foot. Have you ever tried to fold a king-size sheet? Have you ever tried to do it by yourself? It's all. It can be done. But do you see the challenge when we're talking about a king-size sheet? And now here's a curtain 42 foot long by 6 foot, and then we join 5 of those together, 42 foot by 30 foot. The reason this is made in sections, I think, first of all, is because a lot of work would go into this. And so making it in smaller sections would be easier, number one. Number two, these 2 sections are made where they clasp together and are joined together with gold clasp so that they can be removed, easier to transport, set up, and take down. Remember, this is going to be portable, and so they'll be moving this regularly.
It's also going to be a lot of weight.
Yes.
I mean, if you've ever been to, we call it, when a carnival comes through and they actually put up one of them big tents close to that size, it takes everybody in that whole convoy out there, roll it out, and then they have to use pulleys and stuff to get it up. It's so heavy.
Yep. So this is the first covering here. 50 loops and 50 gold clasps join these 2 sections together. So this would be the innermost covering, made of fine linen, embroidered, beautiful colors, expensive, and so the very best comes on the inside here. Lucas, you want to take the next covering?
All right, goat's hair, that'll be 14 looking. All right, so I'm in 14, that's where you got to, right?
Yes.
Goat's hair was the next curtain. what it was made out of. It says he made 11 there. The length of each was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains were the same size. He coupled 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain. So it says that is the outermost is one set, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain of the second set. And he also made 50 bronze clasps to couple the tent together, that it might be one. So 11 curtains of goat's hair.
So the measurements of this would be just slightly different. Altogether, it would be 42 by 60. I'm sorry, no, it would be 45 by 66 feet. So it's a little bit bigger. And of course, this one goes over. By the way, Bedouins in the Middle East still make tents out of goat's hair today. And the only thing that I wish, so this would be this second covering right here, I guess represented on this. I wish they would have made that black, because typically goats in ancient times particularly, but even still a lot today in the Middle East, are black. And the type of goat that grows, this is not the short-haired goat like I grow, that I raise. They have a little bit longer hair that can be used for weaving and so forth. And it's like wool in the sense that it's a very good insulator. It's a very good insulator. And then this next layer that is over that is made out of what? Ram skin. And some have suggested that it is ram skin with the wool still on it for insulation purposes, dyed red. Again, red dye, expensive stuff. This is a huge covering, a huge curtain that is dyed red. And so if we're talking about insulation factor, this had to be probably the most energy efficient tent in all of the camp, because it's got the goat's hair, it's got the ram skin, it's got the inner beauty of that fine linen layer. And then what is the final covering, the outermost covering? Badger skin,
Dolphins.
porpoise, dolphin, seal. There's probably 8 or 10 different ideas of what this may be. Basically, what we have is an ancient term for an animal that we don't really know exactly what it was. And most assume that it was some type of aquatic animal, which you think about, where did they get seal skins in Egypt? How do they, or dolphin, or I guess they get dolphin from the Mediterranean. I don't know if there's dolphins in the Mediterranean or not. But they feel like that this was some type of very waterproof covering is what this would not be typical. And I can only imagine that this would be very, very expensive to get, because probably whatever animal it was had to be imported. The skins had to be imported and to make this. The fact that they would even have this probably speaks to the providence of God.
But wouldn't it be like, since they actually came from where Pharaoh was at, Pharaoh probably traded for these, and these probably was in just the elite houses.
Exactly.
That had these that had been brought in and with their trade all over the world.
Right.
So it would be a very rare item plus a very expensive item just to even have.
That's exactly right.
And they've got a lot.
And they've got a lot of it, yeah, because this is a huge curtain, a huge piece of it's not fabric, it's whatever it is, a huge tent covering here for this, and they've got a lot of it. That's right. Any other thoughts about the coverings or the curtains?
Where do you think they came up with the dye? Did they have to make all these brilliant colors that they had?
Yeah, so some of the dyes, like the purple dyes and so forth, come from little shellfish that have just a speck of this dye in them. The purple dye that, Lydia was a trader of purple. That purple dye was taken from like little snails, and there's just a drop in each animal. So you can imagine how many have to be collected to make enough dye to even dye, a sash or something like that. So that's the reason why it was so expensive, is to come up with these brilliant blues, purples, and scarlets, they had to find different ways that it was very difficult to find, and that's the reason why the cost would be so much. So I don't know all of the things that may be used for those colors, but I do know for the purple that there's a little creature, a little snail-like creature that has just a drop of that dye color.
Was never thought of getting it from a fish.
Yeah, that's right.
It says that the purple is from the Phoenicians or Lebanon. That's where it originated, using sea snails and rock snails to actually get that liquid out to mix it with cloth.
Yep. All right, think you have some idea, visualization of the outer covers. All right, then we'll look at the inner structure. Lucas, you want to take that?
You want to go through maybe 34? Is that?
Sure.
I think that's where it starts talking about the veil. You want to read it all, or do you want
to? Whatever you want to do.
All right. So the structure part, the walls, will begin, I think, in verse 20 and go through maybe 33 or 34. It says, for the tabernacle, he made boards of acacia wood.
Let me interrupt you right
Do
here.
that, because
all right. So here is an acacia tree, and they grow pretty well in the Sinai Peninsula. That was a native wood, so this wasn't wood that was imported or brought with them. They would be able to find acacia trees there. Now, what is amazing is when I look at least all the pictures that I've been able to see of acacia trees, finding planks that would fit the dimensions that we're talking about here, I cannot imagine. So I don't know if they were finding some way to laminate these, splice these together, or what, but I've never seen a, acacia tree with a nice straight trunk that's, 15 feet or anything like that. So they were much smaller trees, at least what I've seen. And so it's amazing the process of taking that and making these articles, making these planks, and making these poles and things out of it.
And then too, they could have been big tall trees, and they hewed down so many of them that after all these years, they ain't never made the length that it was back at the time when they were there.
Maybe.
So, the length of each board, 10 cubits, and the width of each board, 1.5 cubits. You got a dimension on?
So it's about 15 feet tall because they were stood up vertically, and about 27 inches wide. So that's a pretty good.
Large
Go to Lowe's and see if they can find you a 15-foot by 27-inch board.
It says each board had 2 tenons, and I have a footnote: projections for joining, some way of joining them together, for binding one to another. Thus he made for all the boards of the tabernacle. And he made boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side, 40 sockets of silver he made to go under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. For the other side of the tabernacle, the north side, he made 20 boards, 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the board. For the west side of the tabernacle, he made 6 boards. He also made 2 boards for the 2 back corners. They're coupled at the bottom, coupled together at the top by 1 ring. He made both of them for the 2 corners. So there were 8 boards in their sockets, 16 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each board. And he made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the tabernacle, 5 bars for the boards on the other side. On the far side westward, he made the middle bar to pass through the boards. So it's talking about how they were joined together. Overlaid the boards, I'm in 34, he overlaid the boards with gold, made their rings of gold to be holders for the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. So lots of large planks and lots of gold that it would have taken to overlay. I don't know when you overlay something how thick you put it on there, but lots of overlaid gold boards and lots of gold sockets and silver sockets.
You know, acacia wood is supposed to be a real dense, tight grain wood, very heavy wood. And so I'm just thinking what these planks must weigh. Uh, you know, they had to be heavy. I don't know how thick they were. We're not given a dimension how thick they were, but they would have to be heavy. And then they're overlaid with gold, and they have protrusions on the bottom so that they can fit in these sockets. And each plank has 2 sockets under it. Do you know what each of those sockets weigh? Each was made out of a talent of silver. That's 75 pounds. And so you're looking at 2 of those. So you're looking at 150 pounds added on that for each board on this. Well, what I'm saying is this would make our 2x4 framing at our house look pretty wimpy, I would think, as far as weight goes. This is a pretty solid structure. And so you would have these sockets, and you would have them lined up all down the side or wherever these planks are going to fit down into. So then you have these gold overlaid planks standing upright, standing vertically, and it seems the artist rendition here has the innermost pole or the middle pole running through the middle of these all the way down. And that may be right because it doesn't describe the middle pole as having rings that it slides through. It says it goes through the boards. So it seems like that then there was a long pole that went through these planks. Maybe there would be several of them along the way, I don't know. And then you had rings on the top and bottom where other rods or poles went through to fasten it. So pretty heavy duty setup here. Most tents didn't have any type of wood frame to them. They were simply what we think of as a tent. You know, you have your covering with stakes and maybe a pole of some type, but not necessarily walls, structured walls. And but this tent does.
You know, it takes a small army just to take them down.
Yes.
And then a larger army just to haul them all around in the desert, going up and down the terrains.
So who's going to be hauling these? Do you remember? We haven't gotten there yet. The Levites are. And how often are they going to have to do this?
Every time they move.
Every time they move, which sometimes would be daily. And sometimes maybe they would stay at a place. But keeping a good attitude about the next move would be challenging. And so trumpets blow, it's time to go. Oh, no, we got to pack up again and all this. But they were dealing with something that represented God dwelling with them. And so the care that would be provided in this, I think you would have a different mentality, or hopefully you would have a different mentality about this. But it's a pretty heavy-duty structure. Anybody else got anything else about the planks?
It's almost like they're using silver as we would use like concrete or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
At the base.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, and have you noticed now, this is kind of the innermost structure. What have we seen as we get closer to the center of this tabernacle? What have you noticed about the building materials? More precious, more precious. So these are gold, silver concrete bases. and so the very best here on this section. Now, the latter part of this chapter, verses 35 through 38, talk about 2 different petitions and the cloth that's used for those petitions. Verse 35, he made a veil woven of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine linen thread, and it was woven in an artistic design of cherub. So we have another piece of cloth, and this would be what we think of as the veil between the sanctuary here, or the holy place, and the most holy place. It would divide, it would petition this tent in 2 different sections. So this first description here of this veil woven with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine thread with the design of cherubs, that would be to petition off the holy place from the most holy place. Partition, yes. What am I saying? Just petition?
You're saying petition.
Petition, thank you. Yeah, you're not petitioning it, you're partitioning it. Thank you. All right, so verse 36. He made 4 pillars of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, with their hooks of gold, and he cast 4 sockets of silver for them. So this would be the columns or the poles that would hold up this veil. And again, I don't know how much this thing would weigh. I assume it would be pretty heavy, just because most hand-woven fabric is pretty heavy in and of itself. And so gold columns that hold up and partition this section. Now we move, verse 37, to the screen for the tabernacle door. In other words, this is for the entrance of the tabernacle here. And it's similar in many ways. First of all, it mentions that it says it's made of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen thread. So it sounds very, very similar. It doesn't mention that it has the embroidery of the cherub, does it? I don't believe it does. All right. And this is held up by 5 pillars with their hooks overlaid, their capitals, and their rings with gold. But there were 5 sockets. And what were those sockets made out of? Bronze, or brass. And so that's interesting to me, because the pillars for the veil going into the holy place was with silver. These were with bronze or brass. Which is more precious?
So
Somebody, yeah, right. Somebody said, I'll give you a pound of brass or I'll give you a pound of silver. You want to go with the silver. And we find that closer to the most holy place where God would dwell.
You know, that could actually have 2 methods. Not only be rich and the most precious items that he constructed it of, but also the way that it's built, as gold is a conductor of energy. So when God actually is in the most holy, I would assume that whole building actually radiated the fire of God while he was in there, to the point that if you wasn't for the Levite tribe that's supposed to be there, that he's allowed to go into different places, that you would die.
We know the death penalty was associated with that. Whether it was carried out by people or whether it was carried out by God's power, I don't know. But that is an interesting thought. Anybody got anything else through verse 38? All right. So chapter 37 begins talking about the articles that are to be placed in there. And again, earlier when Moses was on the mountain for 40 days, God had given instruction concerning this. And there are several different pieces of furniture that are to go in this tent. And the first is probably the one that we're most familiar with, and that is the ark. The ark of it. Why do we call it the Ark of the Covenant? That's right. Yeah. So the tablets of the covenant, the basis of the covenant, is going to be placed in there, and this whole structure centers around the covenant. God dwelling with his people. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. And so the Ark of the Covenant becomes probably the most important piece of furniture in this, because that's what this whole thing is about. It's about God dwelling with the people. And he dwells with the people based upon the covenant that he's made.
Could it also be called, that he called it the Ark of the Covenant, using Noah built an ark, and it saved the 7 souls. And the Ark of the Covenant that has got the commandments, and I think his rod, and it's got the
Man.
But this is the saving part between God and man, while it's an existence of worship, it being the Ark of the Covenant, that it's the part that's actually saving mankind at that time.
Maybe.
By worshiping.
does ark mean box?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You know what ark means?
Sorry.
Yeah, it just means a box. So when baby Noah was Moses. When I said it, I thought, is that right? And I couldn't figure it out. When baby Moses' mother placed him in an ark, what did she place him in? She made a little box out of bulrushes and placed him in it. When Noah built an ark. What he built was a huge box. And so now what they are to build is a box for the covenant. Okay. All right. And so we'll just briefly look at this. It's a wooden box. What's it made out of? Acacia wood. Yes, that's what almost all of this is made out of. And its dimensions are 45 inches long, 27 inches high, and 27 inches wide. And it was overlaid with pure gold inside and out. And it was made a molding of gold all around it. And so I'm guessing this is the artist's depiction of the molding of gold that would be all around it. He cast 4 rings of gold to be set on its 4 corners, 2 rings on each side and 2 rings on the other side, on each side. And he made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. And he put the poles through the rings on the side of the ark. Now, you know, I make a point about this sometime. When Uzzah touched the ark, how was he supposed to know that he wasn't supposed to touch the ark and that the ark wasn't supposed to be on the cart?
Well, you got those poles going through those rings. If anybody ever seen that, I mean, you'd know that you toted it by the poles. You wouldn't actually touch the ark itself.
Right. And so verse 5 here says he put poles into the rings on the side of the ark to bear the ark. That's what they were placed there for. And so if we didn't have anything else but this passage we were talking about this morning, could we know God's will? Could we determine God's will? If we were careful in reading this, even from this one verse, we could have an idea about, yes, that we know that this is supposed to be carried by people, not placed on an ark. This was to bear it up in that way, or not to be placed on a cart, rather. And so we would have some indication of that.
Wouldn't the ark usually be covered?
Yes, it would be.
So maybe Uzzah didn't know there was rings on it.
Yeah, the poles have been taken out and he didn't know there was. Maybe. I don't know. That's another thought there. If he was familiar with the Word of God, he would know, other than just looking at it. But that was overlooked in that time.
Don't we always think we have a better way of
Yeah,
doing things?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Even applied to our worship.
Sure.
Everybody has a different idea. Would this be better if we did it this way?
Yep. That's exactly right. That's going to be the danger that we always have, is trying to invent or improve upon what God has said. All right, you want to take the mercy seat?
Yep. So verse 6, this is going to be the top of the box here. It's called the mercy seat. It's made of pure gold. 2.5 cubits was its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And on top of it, it says he made 2 cherubim of beaten gold. Made them in one piece at the 2 ends. So on each end, there's a solid gold cherubim. And in verse 9, they spread out their wings above and covered the mercy seat with their wings. They faced one another. The faces of the cherubim were toward the mercy seat. So they're on each end. Their wings are extended. Their faces are downward, and wings extended, covering the top of it there.
So somebody asked, I can't remember if it was during class or after class, what do we have any indication of what cherubim look like? Yeah, there we go. That's we don't. We know they had wings. We know they had faces, and that's it. And so what they look like is, you know, this is an artist's rendition. We don't have any more information than that.
One thing that I never caught before when we just read that, the 2 were actually made out of one piece of gold.
Yes.
So, however tall they are in length, and I mean the intertwine of it being beaten out, I mean that's a big chunk of gold.
It's a big chunk of gold. That's what I was going to say. So I'm looking at this. So the mercy seat was 45 inches long and 27 inches wide. We're not told how thick it is. This, wouldn't you say this is probably about that length?
Probably about that long.
45 by 27,
Probably
24,
wider.
something. It'd be pretty close.
Say wider than that.
Yeah, you
This
think
one,
a little bit wider than that? And I don't know how thick it would be. But if it was an inch thick, which I assume it'd probably be thicker than an inch thick, Can you imagine what a piece of gold would weigh that was this size? And that's the lid, and that's not including the cherub that are on top of it. That's the lid that goes on this, and then somebody has to carry that. That's heavy. Do you understand why somebody says, hey, let's put it on a cart? And that would be better. And so this is not a light burden to carry. But incredible, the value of this. Who knows what the value? Somebody said, well, where is the Ark of the Covenant today? Obviously, I think they made movies about that, didn't they? We don't know. It makes good sense that when the temple would have been destroyed and ransacked by Nebuchadnezzar, that they took this back. Now, whether they kept it intact, some have said, well, maybe it was hidden somewhere. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's hidden somewhere. That was the whole theory of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that they hid it somewhere. But what do you think Nebuchadnezzar would do with it when he got it back? Melt it down. That's right. Melt it down. And some will say, well, God wouldn't let that happen. Well, the Jews said God wouldn't let his temple be destroyed. And he let it happen twice. And so the Ark of the Covenant only is valuable and makes sense if there's a covenant. But if the covenant's broke, then the ark is just a pretty piece of furniture. And so we don't know what happened to it. But boy, it's something to think about how this thing was designed and made and the value of it and how heavy it would be. All right, we'll stop there and we'll pick up with that next time. Thank you for your good attention, good comments. Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.